Welcome back. You are still tuned into Good Morning Namibia this morning. If you are just joining us, thank you for taking the time to start your day with us. And if you've been tuned in, thank you for being patient with us. Now, the 5th annual Continental Convention for Young Women of Africa, held at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, was a gathering that brought together young female leaders from across the African continent to raise their voices, shape policy conversations, and champion inclusive leadership. Duminga Ndala was among the young speakers, amplifying the message that women and youth must be at the heart of Africa's development. She now joins us telephonically with details on her experience, her message, and what this moment means for young women in Africa and across Namibia. Good morning, Ms. Ndala, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to your listeners and viewers.
Well, you presented Namibia on a continental stage, something that is no small feat. How does it feel to have represented your country at such a prestigious continental gathering?
Well, it was such an honor and deeply humbling experience to represent Namibia on such an influential platform. Standing among young women leaders from across the continent really reminded me of the responsibility we carry as leaders, and also our responsibility to shape and craft the Africa that we want, and also to ensure that our voices are included in every spaces where decision making about our lives are made. And it was also, I think, a reminder to us that young women are ready to lead and that they should be included in all strategic positions. So it was really a humbling experience, and I would forever cherish that moment.
Absolutely agree with you on that point of young women being ready to lead and shape policy conversations. But standing at the African Union headquarters carries a lot of symbolism and responsibility. Let's talk a little bit about your message and what went through your mind as you stood at such a powerful podium, the African Union headquarters, delivering your message.
Well, I think the institutions such as the African Union are institutions that every little girl, especially those that find themselves in the political space or the diplomatic space, dream of working at or perhaps delivering a message. So the inner little girl in me was very excited. It was a very humbling experience, like I reiterated before. But I think in that moment, I felt both the weight of history and the agencies of the present. As thinking about the young Namibian women who are often felt unseen, unheard, or underrepresented. And I wanted my words to reflect their aspirations, their struggles, and also their determination. And I also felt a sense of pride, knowing that our generation is rewriting the narrative of leadership in Africa, and that we are present in institutions, or in institutions where the decision making about the girl child or woman leaders are being made. So like I said before, that I think my aim, and when I was delivering the message, was really to echo the voices and to echo the class and generational struggles that women are currently confronted with.
Absolutely. You were one of the young speakers that were
Yes.
entrusted with shaping the conversation. What was one of the core aspects of your message that you really wanted to drive home on that stage?
Well, one of my core message was about inclusivity. I think it's important that yes, Namibia has made quite good strides in terms of political inclusivity when it comes to gender balance, and of course, when you look at other spaces such as the economic spaces, women are still lagging behind, and it's very important that the representation of women should just not be exclusive to political spaces, but it should go beyond political spaces. We need to look at how many women are represented in position or strategic position in the economic sector, how many women are represented in the tourism sector, how many women are represented in the all other spaces that we find ourselves in. So my message was more of inclusivity, one. Two, was the issue of gender-based violence. I think Namibia, like any other African country, we are facing a pandemic, and it's important that we come together as leaders and dissect on the issue of gender-based violence, and also find a resolution on how we are going to end the slaughtering of women and children on our continent. So basically, those were part of my message that I was echoing, and hopefully, I am hoping that my message was heard, and that we will do what is right in the best interest of the women and children of the African continent.
No, thank you so much for that detailed explanation of what what your message's core was. But let's talk a little bit more about the event itself. Now, for viewers who may only be hearing about the convention now for the first time, or that have heard about it previously but didn't really understand what it was about, could you perhaps let us in on what the main purpose of the Young Women of Africa Continental Gathering is all about, and why is it so important for us to pay attention to the conversations that arise from platforms such as these?
Well, the convention basically, it's a platform that brings together emerging women, leaders from all across Africa, to really reflect, strategize, and to influence policy conversations affecting young women on the continent. I think it's a very essential platform because it strengthens continental solidarity. Like I said, that a lot of African countries are basically confronted with the same economic and social challenges. Yes, the national context may be different, but the challenges are the same. So the convention basically provides that platform for us to strengthen continental solidarity. It also helps us to build leadership capacity. I think it's important that we always capacitate our leaders across the board, and that we share lessons and exchange ideas on how we can create a better Africa, and also how we can achieve African policies or agendas such as Agenda 2063 that seeks to see that African women are well capacitated and are taking the lead when it comes to leadership. I think it also ensures that the perspectives of young women are integrated into Africa's development agenda. I think whatever agenda that African countries come up with should speak to the lived realities of women. It should also speak to the aspirations of young women. I think in Agenda 2063, most of us might not be here because it's a long-term goal, but it's essential that whatever is within Agenda 2063 speaks to the aspirations and the needs and the lived experience of young women. So basically, that is the convention. So each year we meet as young women of Africa, and we deliberate on those issues. But apart from that, throughout the year, each and every country has its own chapter, and of course, within their chapter, they are tasked with implementing various activities. I think one of the activities that is very central to us as young women of Africa is to end a period poverty, especially within rural and semi-rural areas. I think that is one of the prominent issues that have been arising in all our countries. And then, of course, the other one is to capacitate our leaders. I think, like I said, within the Namibian context, we have done quite well in terms of a representation of women in political spaces. But I think now we want to move to what we call substantive representation, where we really have women leaders that understand their role and that they are able to carry out what they are tasked with.
Well, you've made it very clear that platforms such as these are essential when it comes to creating spaces to deliberate matters related to women empowerment and beyond that as well, matters that affect women on the ground. But most importantly, platforms like these also lead to powerful interactions with people from all across the continent and moments of inspirations through the various aspects of the program. Perhaps you can talk to us about whether there were any conversations, panels, interactions, or exchanges that left a strong impression of you on you during your duration in Addis Ababa.
Yes, I think we had different commissions during the whole convention, and one of the highlights of the commissions was the issues of inequalities affecting young women, including lack of access to land. I think a lot of African women still have the challenging of accessing land, and of course those are one of the issues that we were deliberating on. How do we change that narrative? How do we ensure that African women have access to land, and how do we empower and capacitate African women, those that find themselves within the agricultural sector? How do we encourage them more to increase their trade and so forth? And of course, the other issue had to do with the issue of reparations. I think you would know that this year, and the African Union has declared this year of towards reparative justice. I think it's a very core issue for all African countries, because of course you would know that we have lost land in our dignity as a result of colonialism, and in some African countries as a result of apartheid. So our issue was that during any conflict, any sort of conflict, women and children are the most affected ones, and they have also lost in terms of resources. They have lost land, they have lost their dignity, and they've also lost their ability to lead. So one of the conversation was that how do we bring back their dignity? How do we ensure that they are also part of the conversation of reparative justice, and how does reparative justice looks like from the perspective of the African woman, and also from the perspective of the African child. So I think those are some of the conversations that really left a mark on us, and we hope that going forth, each and every conversation that are going to be held, women should be represented, and women should be given an opportunity to echo their voices and also to give their perspective from their lenses.
No, thank you so much for that. But before I let you go, could you perhaps tell us in short, just quickly, looking at the bigger picture and looking forward, I mean, Namibia has made significant strides over the years in reducing or bridging the gender inequality gap. But looking at the bigger picture and based on your experience that you had at the recent convention, how do you think Namibia is progressing when it comes to its development and creating space for young women to lead and shape national development, while also creating space for them to address the inequalities that you mentioned, such as access to land?
Well, I think when it comes to Namibia, we need to be very proud of ourselves. We have made quite important progress, particularly within the political representation. You would see a lot that there have been policies that are drafted, committed to achieve gender equality. We have quite a number of representation within Parliament, the National Assembly, as well as the National Council. I think on the political front, we have done quite well, but however, we still have significant work ahead of us. But I think in other sectors, we are still lagging behind, and I think it's important that we become intentional on how we can also capacitate and drive that agenda within those specific sectors. You would know that women still often remain at the margins of decision making in other sectors, and barriers such as economic inequality, limited access to leadership pathways, and gender biasness still persist. So I think there's still more that we can do as a nation, and of course, we need to be intentional about capacitating women in different spheres of life. We also need to be intentional about encouraging women to take up spaces and also to lead, of course, with the right support and with the right ecosystem that has been created within Namibia. I think we are doing quite well, and perhaps other African countries can just learn from us, because we have really become a continental model for inclusive leadership. I mean, our president is female, our vice president is female, and of course, our Speaker of the National Assembly is also female. So we as Namibians can just be proud, although we have not really made significant progress in other spheres, but I think we can still be intentional about it. And with the, like I said, with the necessary ecosystems, I think we can do more going forth.
No, thank you so much for that comprehensive review of your travels to Ethiopia's Addis Ababa for the Continental Convention of Young African Women.
Thank you so much for having me.